Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is Heather Tymensen. And I hope I pronounced your last name correctly
You
because
did?
that's what it looks like. I pronounced it phonetically. Heather has been doing a number of my programs and courses and challenges over the course of the last maybe 2 years. And I've gotten a chance to watch her progress in my Facebook group, the Hebrew Hammers Hidden Hideaway. And I thought, you know what? The time has come. I got to have her on and talk a little bit about this because some of the stuff she's done has been super cool. And I think the world needs to know about it. So this is exactly what we're here for. And we're going to kick this chat off in just a moment. And I want to remind everybody who has not yet, if they have not yet, to grab a copy of my 9-minute Kettlebell and Bodyweight Challenge. As the name would imply, it only takes 9 minutes to do, and it's designed to be done in conjunction with your regular training. So it's not the sort of a thing that you have to put your regular workouts to the side with. You can either do them at the beginning, do it at the end, but because it's based around what's called the gait pattern or your body's walking pattern, specifically with movements like crawling, loaded carries, and other stuff that helps to build strength in every nook, cranny, crevice, and corner of your body. It is very gentle and does not take a lot from you, but it will give a lot to you. So go to 9minutechallenge.com if you want to grab yourself a very free copy. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com, and it is all yours. So without further ado, Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex.
That was a very sincere sounding thanks, Alex. And I believe it very much so because, as I recall, you're Canadian, correct?
I am.
Canadians have a tendency and a reputation of being very polite. And I, as a Midwesterner, I feel like we have some kind of competition, because Midwesterners also have this reputation. So
do you apologize a lot? We apologize for apologizing.
That we don't do. I sort of hesitate to say that would be, well, I take that back. Actually, Midwesterners do apologize quite a bit. Now that I think about it, because I think, like if I go to a store and, I'm in somebody's way, I'll be like, or they'll be like, excuse me, I'm like, oh, sorry, and then like let them go by. And it's just like second nature. I'm not really sorry. It's like a formality, So yes, yeah, I do. If at the time that we're recording this, the World Cup is going on. And if there were a World Cup of politeness, I think that Canada and the Midwestern United States would be like neck and neck. It would be a pretty tough.
It'd be a good fight. I don't know if there'd be red cards, though. I mean, that would be rude, right? Like we have to watch our manners. So
that's true. Actually, that would probably be the extent of the competition. It would just be like,
if it rained in at yellow cards,
Yeah, exactly. Who can get the fewest red cards? Who gets the fewest yellow cards? Who is the most obsequious? I think that's the right word to use. But it would be very boring, and nobody would watch it. And I think people understand that instinctively. That's why not many people come to the Midwest. Like, oh, it's boring. People are just being polite all the time. No thanks. I'm going to go to New York where everyone is rude to you. So now, at any rate, completely on a separate topic, I am curious because, Canadians, maybe similar to Nebraskans, don't exactly have a reputation of being sports stars unless they're in hockey or something like that. But and I won't give away your athletics of choice, but I do want to build up to it, and I want to know a little bit more about what your origin story was. Like, were you just like as a kid you just automatically were very physically active, you were into physical culture? Was it something you discovered later? Give us kind of like the down low about your origin story.
Okay. So I would say I was about the farthest thing you could ever find to an athlete when I was a kid growing up. There was just it just wasn't a big thing in our house. It wasn't, we watched a hockey game, on the weekends kind of thing if it was on, but that was really about as far as it went. Taking the dog for a walk every night was as close to any athletics as I grew up with, right? So I was definitely your stereotypical picked last in gym kind of kid. So it definitely, I came to it later life, and I actually struggled with weight most of my life too, just really poor nutrition is, really all it comes down to. And it was just, it wasn't like a conscious thing. It was just, I loved sugar growing up, and, who doesn't? Little kids love sugar. And, it just kind of stuck with me into my early adulthood and stuff like that. And then I started, so I had got married, out of after college, I guess we got married. And then a couple of years later, we had twins. So my twins just turned 18. And so when they were little, I was like, okay, I don't want to be that, overweight, out of shape parent that can't keep up with their kids. You don't want to get winded pushing your kids on the swing. Like, that's pretty humbling, right? So, we knew we needed to make some changes and stuff. So I would say that's when I really started to take more of an interest in any kind of athletics. And I'd always wanted to be a runner. It was always something I just admired, runners, right? Like, you see those crazy guys, when it's minus 30. Well, we're up in Canada, so that's like what? I
That's
don't
in the
even
middle
know.
of July. It's like
Yeah.
minus 30, yeah.
Fahrenheit. It's cold anyhow.
Yeah.
So, you see those guys running no matter what, and they just go for days. And I'm like, someday that's kind of what I would want to be. So I started, working towards stuff like that. And so I guess running was really where it started for a couple of years. And you can only get so far with that, and then I kind of realized that I needed to build some muscle. Like, running by itself it's a good start, but it's not enough if you really, it depends where you're starting from, I guess. And in my experience, it wasn't enough to really, I don't know what's the right word here. I just felt like I could do more. Like, it was time for some strength training and stuff too. Like, a couple things that stand out when, like when my kids were little, like changing, the water jug, the big 5-gallon water jug on the water cooler kind of thing. If that was empty, I had to wait till my husband came home to change it. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty sad. Like, I could lift up, 2 toddlers when I had to, but I'm like, let's start building some muscle here. So that's when I got into kettlebells, actually.
Oh, so right out of the gate, you got
So,
into kettlebell training.
well, yeah, I would say I gauge everything by how old my kids are. They were still littler, 5  there So about 10, 12, 13 years ago, I'd say I started, and I kind of dabbled. So, there was someone who started, she took her training course, and kettlebells were still pretty new around here. And Agatsu was really the only school that was teaching it. So I met up with a lady who took her Agatsu course, and she was offering her first courses. So I jumped in. I'm like, I don't even know what a kettlebell is, but let's try it and see what happens. So that's kind of where that started.
That's pretty impressive. It's not all that common. At least my experience has been that, because I can say for me, I had a similar sort of background, picked almost last, in gym class. I never really struggled with weight, but I definitely, and my parents always tried to stay physically active. We had exercise equipment and stuff like that. But I think the natural thing for people to gravitate to when they want to get in shape is like, well, I got to run. You see people doing it all over the place. Yeah, I think instinctively too, you're like, oh, I don't actually need any equipment. I just go outside and then I just run, like,
just go.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember trying, some of the standard weight room stuff for a while. It never really clicked with me, but I definitely fell in love with the kettlebell as soon as I, shook handles with it, as it were. Now, did you just, you mentioned you just dabbled with it. Did you start dabbling with anything else? Like, were there any other physical activities that you found were maybe a little bit more enticing or intriguing than just running?
I did a bit of swimming here and there, mostly just for cardio. I was certainly never any good at it. So it was just, it was a good stretch in the pool kind of thing. And it was something that fit in well with my schedule at the time when the kids were little. So I did a bit of swimming and a bit of running. And so I actually took, when I started with kettlebells, I probably did it for a year or so with my old trainer. And then I actually did the Agatsu level 1 instructor course myself. And I really didn't have much intention of teaching. I did a couple classes for her, and I didn't have the background, I felt like, to really teach anyone else. So it was more for myself to see what I was capable of. And, that just the fact that I, finished the course and, survived to tell the tale kind of thing. I was, pretty proud of myself for that. So that was a big accomplishment. It was just a huge confidence booster, I guess. And then but it was kind of weird after that. So I went back to, right around that time, I went back to school to work on my accounting degree. So I was doing that at home with the kids. And, so I still did, I'd kind of alternate my running and my kettlebell workouts just for strength, and kept that up for quite a while. But I found that I was really bad for kind of doing the same routines all the time for kettlebells. And there were no gains coming, I was just kind of coasting along. And I probably did that for a lot longer than I should have before I kind of clued in. And I'd tried looking for different, trainers and stuff, and there was really no one else in the area doing it. And finding stuff online, I found was hard to weed out the junk, I guess, and the filler, and just the, the magazine article type workouts, the one size fits all. I'm like, this is, not really getting anything out of this. So I think actually, so what I was doing one day, I was trying to look up a form for an exercise. I forget what it was. And I knew when you're on YouTube, if you searched usually like RKC style, whatever, you'd find some pretty, reputable stuff for sure. And I came across one of Pat Flynn's videos. It was an old video, and he still had short hair in it. I think it was that old. And
it's extremely old. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty old, but it was exactly what I was looking for. So then I started to follow him and just see. I found if you find someone you like and you like their style and you like what they're teaching, you're like, okay, who are they following? Who's in their stuff kind of thing. And that's actually what led me to your stuff. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Pat, and the off chance that you're listening, thank you for sure. Pat and I actually did a bunch of, I'm sure you've seen them by now. Like back when we were both living in Pennsylvania, we ended up doing a bunch of videos together as well. And this is just a very funny side note. I don't know what makes me think of bringing this up now. I hope you didn't see this video, because a lot of people didn't. We thought it was going to be like really big, but I do like a really bad Michael Caine impression. And like I did it for Pat and one of our other friends, John, and they thought it was funny for some reason. They're like, we have to do a video surrounding this. So like Pat spent like the week, like, okay, we're going to get John to come in. He's a professional videographer and he's going to do this video. And that's going to be you like pretending to be Michael Caine. And again, this was like totally just an inside joke. And so the point that I'm making is that it did not get nearly as many views as we would like. So I'm very glad that your first introduction was, something good that Pat did, and not like one of the goofy
not that one
that he and I did later. But now I know people are going to go look it up, and so hopefully it will get its viral chops, after 5 years of languishing on his YouTube channel. Now, Pat and I have a very similar style of kettlebell training. I'm not really very familiar with Agatsu, but Pat and I come from an RKC background, and he's gone on and done his own thing, and I've gone on with Strong First, which was kind of like the outgrowth of RKC. And what were some of the things that you started to notice that were changes that were taking place when you started looking for how to change up your routine, maybe improve the way that you were doing the exercises? Like, did you start to see that uptick in your results again, or was it kind of slow going?
I would say it was definitely, so there's a lot in the middle there that kind of happened that needs to kind of flush it out, I guess. So I went back to work. I stayed home with my kids till they were about 10. And then, so back then it was easy to fit in your workout every day and, all that good stuff kind of thing when you're at home. And then I went back to work full time. So it just threw a huge wrench into things. And I went from, standing all day and being pretty active to, stuck at a desk. So I'm an insurance broker, commercial insurance broker, and it's high stress, and it's like you turn on your computer at 8:30, and if you're lucky, you walk out the door at 5. So it's, it's constant, it's go, 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 and you're glued to that desk. So, and I'd heard all the, I guess, stereotypes. You go back to work, you're in your 40s, you're going to gain weight, it's going to happen, you're going to trash your lower back sitting all day. And I'm like, so you're kind of expecting these things, and these things started to happen. So I see my weight creeping up again, and it wasn't my back that hurt, but it was my hips that were killing me. I can't stand sitting all day. And I'm like, okay, well, just because the big they say that this is going to happen, I'm like, who says it has to happen? You don't have to accept it. Like, you're totally in control of your own, like destiny, if you will. That sounds cheesy, but you know what I mean? You're responsible for your own actions, and you have control over these things. So I'm like, why do I have to sit all day? I want to stand. And everyone at work was like, what do you mean you're standing? Like, why? Are you okay? And I'm like, no, it's good. It's okay. It was just this totally foreign thing to them. So then I became this weirdo at work with a standing desk who never wears shoes all day. I wear socks in the office, but I hate my shoes. So, and I just started to feel instantly better. So when that started happening, and then right around that time, I think probably is when, I really got into your programs and stuff like that too. And then as well, I started karate again with my kids. So all these things kind of happened together, and I started to work with, as my weight crept up, kettlebells. You can't out exercise a bad diet, and you and I know that, and that's a hard lesson for a lot of people to learn and to admit. They're like, oh, I partied hard last night at, with wings, I'll just work out, an extra hour this morning. Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Like, you're going to want to add a couple of hours onto that, because
Yeah, a couple
you're not going to
hours.
burn it off that easy.
Right. So I started working with a local trainer, just for nutrition advice, really, more than anything. And she got me on a good plan doing, it was really kind of a no nonsense thing. It was just portion based. And it was, each meal has, your proteins, your carbs, and your fat. And, this is an average portion, and, just kind of kept things reined in. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And it really just, stuck with me. And then I started, so as soon as that, I started to drop weight again, and I got to, the lowest weight in my even my adolescent life, I think, and managed to keep it there. And that was just by, following that diet, and not diet as in a temporary thing, but a mindset, a daily regimen. And I found something that worked really well for me. So then once I started to really get into your programs, they were that much easier. And I don't want to say easier, but I saw the results more, because when I lost weight too, I found I lost a lot of muscle that I had before. So all of a sudden I was, at this weight, but I'm like, okay, there's no muscle left on my body like it used to be there. And I probably should have been eating more protein, was probably what was going on, looking back on it. So then getting into programs like Gainsgiving and stuff like that really packed on and only a couple pounds, but it made a huge difference, I found, in just like muscle definition and tone and stuff like that. And I just felt stronger, especially at karate. I noticed a big difference in like stamina and sparring and stuff like that. So
that's great. Yeah, one thing I think, and I am sure you've heard this, but because I still hear it all the time, is that oftentimes ladies will be like, well, I know that I should lift weights and stuff, but I don't want to get bulky. And all I can think is like, ma'am, that is the point. And it is so hard. I do have to say, I admire that sort of like inner confidence that like, I'm just going to lift a weight. And next thing I know, I'm going to be an IFBB pro, champion. It's like, you're not going to accidentally work that hard, but when you do put on some muscle, like you did, you noticed, I'm sure, you mentioned you could perform better. You felt stronger. And that sense of strength that you get is really inspiring. It's really, the sort of a thing that makes you want to, makes you feel a lot more confident.
yeah.
I'm sure your sparring partners probably noticed that there was a big difference in your performance as well.
Yeah, I guess I did get a couple comments from my sensei at karate. He's like, kind of gave me one of those looks, and they're like, "You've been working, Heather?" I'm like, "I've been doing my homework,
Yeah.
and So just those little things is nice to get that recognition, and just confidence is huge, like you said too. And nothing really drives me nuts more than like we'll go back to the water jug thing. When the girls at work, the water jug on our side of the office will be empty, and they'll put it in front of one of the boys' doors, to change the water. And I just look at them, I'm like, we don't need boys to change our water. And I just grab the jug and go all the way to the kitchen and all the way back, and it's just that little confidence thing. It's like, yeah, just yeah, the bulk thing is funny, because once you actually start seriously working with weights, you're like, you're not going to get bulky. Like you're gonna feel good and you're gonna look good. But yeah, the bulk thing, I don't even know where that came from. Like it's probably a muscle building thing from the 70s or something.
I kind of wonder. I have a theory. My theory is that when most people, their first, and this is changing a bit now, but I can say even for me, like for most people, their first contact with the idea of lifting weights at all is 100% bodybuilding. And, like the glossy magazines you see, like every time you walk into the bookstore or a grocery store or whatever it may be. So you think, okay, this is equivalent to like lifting weights. And so this is what to expect when you do it. And you just have to, tear out whatever the workout of the month is, and then you apply it. And next thing you know, like you're completely jacked, provided that you're taking all the supplements that they're advertising,
right?
Stuff like that. So yeah, I think people get the sense that, like I don't want to get too bulky, which is like I think it sort of goes back to that, because that was my sense early on too, is that like I mean, I still remember honestly when I started kind of looking a little bit more toward strength, it was I had read The Art of Expressing the Human Body. It was about Bruce Lee's training methods, and I was like, oh, and talking about Bruce Lee doing one-arm chin-ups, and like, oh man, that'd be really cool to learn how to do. It's like, well, you don't learn how to do one-arm chin-ups. Like you work super, super hard, and then you work even harder. So, like early on, you just don't know what to expect. You just kind of expect that there's like, some, you're just going to do it until you can do it. Like I'm just going to keep lifting weights until I'm 50 pounds heavier. And I think that's where this sort of fear comes from. But if you've done it long enough, you know that more than likely what's going to happen is you're going to put on the right amount of muscle in the right amount of places. And you're going to wail on people with greater ease if you're doing karate and things like that. Now, do your kids lift kettlebells?
No. So it's kind of funny. My son is like, they've never paid any attention. My daughter will make fun of me, and I love doing like a lot of the OS resets and stuff. And she'll walk out of her bedroom and she's just like, you're weird. And I'm like doing, some kind of rolls or something, or crawling. That's my favorite. She's like, really? And she just walks by, and it's kind of our joke. But my son, he's pretty shy, and he doesn't have a lot of confidence. But he'll drop these little hints here and there, and I'll know, like, he'll leave my weights a mess, and I'm like, okay, if you're gonna use my bells, you gotta put them back in order, right?
Yeah.
So I know that he's in there, and then he's like, he'll show me his hands. He's like, these calluses, are these from chin-ups? I'm like, if you're doing lots of chin-ups, they probably are. So that's his little like dropping a hint, right? So I know he's doing it, but he won't, come right out and be like, hey, can you show me how to do this? Once in a while, he'll do stuff with me. So I'll kind of get in little just drop little hints here and there. I'll be like, hey, can you check my form on this for me? And, just to let them see that, I guess, just kind of be part of it without pushing it on them. Because you can't push anything on kids, because they're just like, scram, mom, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So I just try and set that example. And I kind of wish, and, like I said, growing up, we didn't have, my mom just wasn't athletic. She just wasn't, so it's not that we were against it or anything. It just wasn't something, that we came across in our house. But I wish growing up that there had been a little more focus on that, and just a little more paying a little more attention to nutrition. And that's one thing that, drives me absolutely wild with kids nowadays is, you see them walk into school with a rock star in their hand. And I'm just like, no, it drives me nuts. So, I mean, exercise is one thing kind of thing, but the bad diet and the nutrition, I just wish there there's a lot more focus on that. And I don't harp on it hard with my kids. That stuff just isn't in the house. It's
Yeah.
just not something that they'll find. So I kind of hope that they're paying attention. They might not be paying attention now, but in a couple of years and they look back, I hope they're like, oh, maybe have an aha moment. I hope. We'll see.
I fully suspect they will, because I look back now and I think, I think I'm unique relative to my parents, but I can also see where their influence was on me. For instance, like, I really don't drink very much in terms of, alcohol. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I almost never, like, I don't think I've ever seen my dad drink anything, and he's not opposed to it. It's just not something that he does.
Just doesn't do it.
Yeah, and my mom never really, I mean, maybe at a special occasion she might have had wine or something like that, but it was just one glass and that was like it. And so it just never, occurred. Like when my friends would get like just absolutely hammered drunk, I was like, I just didn't understand like the desire to even do that. And then likewise, I think as I mentioned earlier, we always had exercise equipment in the house. They never told me, go downstairs and exercise or do this, that, or the other thing. But it was also something that it was like there wasn't a big bridge for me to have to cross. And so it's certainly
Mm-hmm.
helpful, I think, whenever your kids can see you doing something like that, because when it has to be their idea. So
Yeah.
when it becomes their idea to do it, then it'll be easy. Like, and so, like this is the same for me, like with my parents, like I would give them, my mom was a little more receptive to ideas early on. My dad was, and now I think he'd be more likely to ask me questions, and periodically he will, but he's got his own exercise regimen that he does. My brother, I've tried to give him suggestions. Like we were hanging out with him a couple weeks ago, and he was kind of doing this like with his shoulder, and he's got a very
Yeah.
physically active job. He has a lawn care and snow removal business that he runs. And I was like, is your shoulder okay? I didn't even ask him, like, can I try to help you fix it? He's like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Don't like you didn't want like any ideas from me. Like if it's his idea, he will do it. And so I think that's what it is with family, like
Yeah.
they don't see, like they see you as mom, or as a wife, or a sister. They don't see you as, somebody who's turned her life around and gotten in the best shape ever and is super strong and, stuff like that. Even if they can witness all those things, like they don't see you as playing that role.
Yeah.
So again, it's happened to me, and this is my profession. Like it's very hard to get family members to see you as anything other than a family member, but you're definitely on the right track by, letting them see you train, and even if they're making fun of you, I know that I think you said your daughters are going off to college, they're gonna be doing the
Yeah.
resets, I'm sure, like they're not gonna tell
Yeah.
you, but they're gonna hit the gym, they're gonna do all those things, and that you can be sure of. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, uh,
They'll get there. Yeah. I hope so.
absolutely, I
Yeah.
think so, most certainly. Now, one of the things too that I'm curious about, because you mentioned having discovered some of my material later on, and hopefully, again, your kids will also start doing, some of this cool stuff like Gainsgiving, like we mentioned earlier, and they'll be getting jacked and turning heads and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what were some of the apart from Gainsgiving, which we talked about, some of the other programs or challenges of mine that you've done? What are some of the things that that you noticed in particular were changes that you underwent when you did them?
I would say that one of the most recognizable and the simplest move. So push-ups are one thing, and a lot of women struggle with push-ups. And part of the problem that we're taught, from day one in gym class, oh, just drop your knees, put your knees on the ground, just do girl push-ups. I'm like, no, those aren't even a thing. Right now, I know better, right? So I mean, I learned quite a while ago, get your knees off the ground kind of thing, but I could never get any depth in a push-up ever. Like I could get like 2 inches down no matter what. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm just not strong enough. And then it was, I don't remember what program if it was in the pull-up program or if it was just one of it could have been in a circle. It could have just been a video. I'm not sure. But you talked about the corkscrew technique to activate your lats. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? So, I thought about it and then I went and I'm like, I practiced it for a few minutes and then I went and I did like a full like chest to the ground push up. And I was like, holy crap. Like that was my aha moment kind of thing. And it was just the simplest little thing. And it was a game changer. So once I learned that, how to activate those lats, and so that, really helped my push-ups just go, like, I could do 20 now, no problem. Like in karate, I could smoke those kids. They
Oh,
might
yeah.
have a lot on me, but I could smoke them in push-ups, let me tell you. So there was that. And then the next thing that came with that was the actual pull-ups too. And I tried for years with a chin-up bar and the strap, that I probably read it on, saw it on some video or something. They're like, oh, do assisted, take some of the weight off. So you try the rubber band, and it doesn't help. I mean, yeah, it helps you get up over the bar, but you're not getting stronger. You're not learning how to do the movement. So what I really loved about your programs is how they just, like, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to get there. Here's how to break it down. And if you can't quite get there yet doing the full thing, here's, how to modify it and make it as simple as you need to. And then you work on it from there. So I went through Power Up Your Pull Up and, worked on the corkscrew with the lats. And then all of a sudden I did my first pull up, and I was like, it was right there with the push up moment kind of thing. And it was, that's pretty empowering, I would say, to be able to do a full pull up. Well, chin up pull. I always forget these. I always screw these up.
Either way, you're pulling yourself up. We'll call it a
Pull
pull-up.
ups. Yeah.
Yes.
Pull up. Yeah. I think it's actually the chin, but yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. So anyhow, yeah, that's like, I can't even explain that feeling, how empowering that is when you're like, I could probably do anything I want to right now, So, and
It is
because for
great
guys,
feeling.
it comes right. And for men, it comes so easy. And even if you take someone who's pretty out of weight, overweight, not really overweight, but out of shape, guys naturally have that upper body strength. So even if they never really worked at it, they can get up over the bar. Maybe they can't, do a lot of reps or anything like that, but they don't have to work hard for that first one. But a lot of women, it's almost impossible if you don't know how to do it. But just knowing the how, it was like, okay, what else can I do? And, and you then you're like flipping through your programs. You're like, that's cool. Let's start on that one next,
Yeah, it really is a game changer. And I've had the privilege of working with a number of women who, they were not like spring chickens in many cases. They were in their 50s. I remember one of the first gals that I ever helped, she was in her 50s and she did her first chin up of her life. And she said a word I can't repeat here, but it was like holy, and then you can, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And likewise, I've helped some other people who've had similar stories to you, that they were like, okay, I'm going to use bands, I'm going to try lat pull downs, I'm going to do a rain dance. Like there's all these like odd things that we're told are supposed to help. And a lot of people, I think, have been put in a position similar to what you were in, where they went online, they were trying to, like you mentioned earlier, trying to sift through the true information from the stuff that's just kind of like, sounds good or maybe is
Fluff.
glamorous. Yeah, but it's fluff. Exactly. So yeah, that is especially cool, like learning how to right off the bat get your first push up, and you've never managed to do one before. And then likewise working up to your first pull up without fancy machines, no supplements that you had to buy from a glossy magazine or anything like that, just some good old fashioned hard work in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I would imagine too that your son is like, oh, I got to keep up with her because she's smoking me on these pull-ups. So,
Yeah.
and on that topic of pull-ups, I know you've also done hanguary, which was a lot of people think like if they were to see you in the gym just hanging, like, well, what's she doing? But
Yeah.
but you had some pretty cool experiences with hanguary as well. Like, and I don't want to give them away, but I was reading through an old post of yours just prior to our call, and tell us a little bit about some of the experiences you had with that as well.
So Hanguary was that was a good little program. It's kind of one of those things where, like you said, you see someone hanging in the gym and you're like, is he stretching? Like what's the
Yeah.
point of that? And so you try it, and your initial, your max hang is like 15 seconds, and you think your hands are gonna fall off, and like, so it's funny how it seems it seems so simple, and you don't really even realize what you're, what you're actually working until you actually start to really focus on it and put it into your daily routine. And I think by the end of it, I was up to, I don't even remember, was it a minute and a half, minute
Something like that.
20,
Yeah.
something like that for a hang. And then it's like, holy cow, like that's a long hang, but, and I'll tell you what I actually realized after, and this was, you wouldn't even have heard about this after the program. So I got, well, I told you about my rib this summer at karate. So I got kicked in July. I got kicked, took a pretty good kick in the rib, and I cracked a rib. And I've never had an injury like that in my life. I grew up in we didn't beat the crap out of each other when we were kids, my brother and sister and I. And so I've never had an injury like that ever. And it just totally threw me for a loop. And you know how you hear how important it is to build your abs, and you're like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. But until you damage something in there and you can't use them at all, like I had no idea how much you use that muscle. And I couldn't even turn over in bed without, you could feel that rib, and it was like, oh, like it's just agony. And I couldn't even touch a kettlebell for probably 6 weeks. I was really upset about it.
Wow.
And one of the things I did to gauge how far along my recovery was try and hang. And I would go down to my bar, and at first I couldn't even lift my feet off the ground. And I'm like I'd never experienced anything like it before. And so I just kind of kept using that as a measuring stick, if you will, to see how far it came along. And I don't know if I could do a minute and a half right now on the bar. I haven't tried probably for a while, but yeah, you don't really realize how much all that stuff is connected and how much you use it until you have an injury like that or something, or you can't use it. And then you're like, holy cow, you realize how important it is to have that core strength. It's a lot more than just, feeling good, looking good kind of thing. But it's once you actually can't use it, you realize how much you do use it when you're healthy. So that had a pretty profound effect on me actually this summer.
No, I can imagine. And I never would have even guessed. I've had a few injuries. Some of them, were particularly not fun. But I think rib injuries I have heard are like just the most annoying of them all. I am sure that if you had like, I don't know, like lost your leg at the knee, that would probably be worse. But,
Sure.
in terms of like, things that people are likely to suffer, especially in combat sports, I know a guy who cracked a rib in Muay Thai, and, I think he was like 19 at the time. And yeah, he was down for the count for quite some time. I remember that. And I kind of put it out of my mind. I didn't think much about it, but to think, gosh, rolling over in bed like that would keep you up, or wake you up in the middle of the night, just from this agony. And people don't think a whole lot about that sort of a thing. But I would bet that you made faster recovery because you were strong enough. It didn't possibly cause more damage, or make you even more infirm.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, have you been able to get back into things and maybe take your revenge on whoever broke your rib?
Well, it was funny. It was quite a learning experience, because the thing with karate is I started doing it with my kids, and then my son dropped out, and then it was me and my daughter, and it was kind of our thing, and we would go, and and then she dropped out. I forget when she did, maybe about a year and a half ago now. And she was just never into the sparring. It wasn't her thing. So, the big things in karate, if you're not familiar with it, are sparring, self-defense, and then kata. So kata, both of us would love kata. I could do kata all day long. But and the sparring, it's fun. I'm not wild about it, but when you've got all your gear on and stuff, and it's fun. It takes out a lot of stress, and at the end of a long day at work, you're like, that was a good time. But so it's interesting, so the kids at karate, most of them are teenagers in our class. There's not a lot of adults in there. So as they all start out when they're like 12, all the kids are the same size, and then all the boys get way bigger, and the girls kind of stop growing around that point. So that's kind of the point where they separate the boys and the girls. But sometimes, when we're just sparring, they'll all spar together. And some of these boys are big, and they're fast, and they're scary, right? When you're, 110 pound, 5'3" girl, So that really bothered my daughter, and I could tell that she was, you know, going away from the sport. So I wasn't surprised when she stopped. I was upset, you know, because it was our thing and we would do it together. And
Yeah.
you know, all of a sudden I was the one that didn't have a partner, karate, you know, whatever. But so I forgot where I was going with this.
Well,
Talking
keep
about,
going.
yeah, right. Just keep
Yeah.
going. Just talking about sparring. So so anyhow, we get really comfortable in class because we're always sparring the same people, right? And we had these guest instructors. I think they actually used to be owners in the school. So it was an older sensei, gentleman, probably mid 60s, and his son, probably mid 30s, I would say. I'm not sure. But this guy could kick anybody's butt in that dojo. And so we had all of a sudden, and he was kind of, you know, he was taking it easy on us, you know, but I went in using techniques I would use with the kids, and I went in once and I went in again and I walked right into that kick. And I was just like, I can't believe I did that. It was so stupid. And I was really tired that day. I was having a bad day and I probably shouldn't have even been there. And it really made me question a lot of things too about, you know, like, okay, now I can't pick up a kettlebell for 6 weeks. I can barely roll over in bed. Like, what if I had, you know, gotten hurt worse? Like, what am I doing here? Was kind of my, you know, my mindset. And it took me a long time over the summer to think about whether or not I really wanted to be there, because it, you know, it upset everything else. And it was odd. The only thing I actually could still do was run. So that really didn't affect I wasn't really affected by the ribs. So it was weird. But
Yeah.
anyhow, it was kind of a, you know, a lot of soul searching, I guess, and deciding if I did want to be there. And I'm like, you know, you learn from it too, right? Like, it was very humbling, you know, on one hand. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, you got to pay attention, you know, like keep your eyes open, keep your head up, kind of thing. And it was just a, you know, just a stupid accident. It wasn't malicious or anything like that. So you know, it was what it was. But now I'm fully recovered from it now and back into it at karate and stuff. And hopefully black belt within, I think, probably the year, probably next fall is kind of, I think, the timeline
It's very
ish.
exciting.
So yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, I agree. You know, having done, I've just kind of started getting back into martial arts lately. I started taking some boxing lessons. And so today I had to do some sparring with, I've got my instructor is this guy from Nigeria, like, couldn't be a nicer guy, but he's also like just wham, like super fast, you know, like extremely good. And so he had one of the other instructors as like my corner man. And I'm not in the best condition right now. I'm not, you know, I haven't been working on my conditioning as much this year. And so I was like, well, that was the first thing I noticed. Like, my God, like I'm super winded, you know, like I wish I could
Yeah.
just do the Indiana Jones thing and, you know, like you got your gun by your side, but you're like, okay, well, you know, this is like, you know, a street situation out of nowhere. You just come out of like, you know, I don't know, grocery store and someone having a bad day and they try to tee off on you, you know, like this is, you know, if you're tired, you had a long day or what have you, you still have to be able to perform. And so, but
Mm.
that is one thing that worries me too, is like, you know, he took it easy on me. He wasn't trying to,
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
playing with you.
yeah, exactly. It was like, you know, and obviously like I hired him, so I think on the one hand he doesn't want to be like, okay, well, you know, I'm just gonna maybe put him in a situation where he can't come back for a couple of weeks because, you know, he's got to lick his wounds. But that is one thing that I think is extremely important for anybody who wants to get into martial arts. Is number one, you want to find a reputable school, and it sounds like you definitely have. Number
Mm.
two, realize that, you know, accidents can happen and you could definitely get hurt, and um, there are better ways of getting hurt. You know, I think yours obviously was unpleasant, but I think in particular about people who do like jujitsu and they're like tearing ligaments and stuff
Yeah.
like that that just doesn't heal at all, you know.
Yeah.
Or if it does, it's nothing like what it was before. So you want to make sure that you've got people who are professionals and they know how to, you know, uh, they know how to they know how to keep you safe. And, you know, in a case like yours where you zigged when you should have zagged, like those are things you just can't avoid. You know, those things happen. But
Yeah.
to me, it also comes back to the importance, obviously, of conditioning, but also being strong so that you can actually bounce back from these sorts of things rather than be just completely laid up for who knows how long, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we have covered quite a bit of awesome ground, and it sounds like, you know, you're journey is going to continue into black belt and beyond, and maybe you're going to, track down this guy who broke your rib and maybe at the black belt test. Who knows? When that happens, by the way, just email me, and you'll come back on, and we'll talk all about it. It'll be like, like a Kill Bill sort of sort
Right.
of thing. But in the meantime, if people want to follow your training, or if people want to keep up with what you're doing, is there any place to follow you apart from the Hebrew Hammers Hidden Hideaway, my Facebook group, where you
Just
periodic?
that. That's about it.
Well,
Yeah.
then I think that's as good an advertisement as any to join the
Right. I
Hebrew Hammers Hidden
think.
Hideaway. If they have not already, they will see Heather going in there kicking butt and making some pretty awesome progress, and all manner of things, whether it's karate or crushing weakness. She's got her finger on the pulse of all of these things. And her kids will also soon be, no doubt, finding their way around the kettlebell and around other calisthenic stuff as well. So I look forward to
Yeah.
hearing more about their progress once it's their idea, of course. We don't want to
That's right. It's got to be
force
their
them.
idea.
Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you very much for coming on the program. It's been a lot of fun catching up.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. And folks, thank you for listening. And as always, have fun and happy training.